wanted to start by defining spirituality. It was interesting. Again, the questions, I was just trying to stay still in my seat because I think it's important. The core of my work comes from the fact that I study Egyptian history and philosophy. The Egyptians had a civilization based on tens of thousands of years of observation of natural and cosmic phenomena that they used to develop a system of what they believed to be divine law and order, principles that never change. Among the principles that they developed by studying the human brain, the physical human brain, was that the left hemisphere of the brain governed knowledge, the acquisition and processing and comprehension of data, and the right hemisphere of the brain governs understanding, the psycho-spiritual processing of that data. And that true wisdom was simultaneous development of both hemispheres of the brain. That to be truly wise, you can't just understand. You have to know what you understand. And you can't just know. You have to understand what you know. And that is, I think, at the core of spiritual challenge of people, individually and collectively. So my position is you have to be able to define spirit. If you can't process it on the left hemisphere brain, if you can't know it, if you can't articulate it, even if it becomes subject to change, then on some level you are not able to fully internalize it. It becomes this intangible sort of ethereal thing. So I'm going to attempt to define spirituality. This is my definition at this point, at this time in my life, given the body of information and experience that I have. It is verbose, and I apologize in advance because I found it very difficult to condense, again, speaking to Darwin's point, that it becomes challenged by language. But I want us to be clear on where I'm coming from. To spirituality. A primary allegiance to the force or entity considered creator and governor of the universe, that is demonstrated by thought, speech, and behavior, reflecting a dominant emphasis of right over righteousness, the collective over the individual, and the intangible over the tangible. I'll repeat that. A primary allegiance to the force or entity considered creator and governor of the universe, commonly referred to as God. A primary allegiance to God that is demonstrated by thought, speech, and behavior. I have challenged with definitions that talk about a sense of this. One can have a sense of something, one can have an idea, but if it is not manifested in thought, speech, and deed, then what is it? Can it be called spirituality, or can it be called a philosophy? Demonstrated by thought, speech, and behavior, reflecting a dominant emphasis, not a consistent emphasis. That's impossible in human beings because human beings, by definition, are flawed. A dominant emphasis of right over righteousness. What does that mean? collective over the individual. That's the connectedness that I believe Mr. Chappelle spoke of earlier. That dominantly, not consistently, you put the good of the whole above your own good or the good of individuals. This requires forethought. When you're thinking about the collective, you have to stop and think about how present actions are going to manifest in the future. It also requires you, to some degree, to suspend ego. And that, I believe, is an act of spirituality. And the intangible over the tangible. This speaks, these words are actually my attempt to define spirituality without saying spirit. So I had to use intangible. But what I mean by that is that the understanding of the thing is more important than the thing itself. That the intangibles in personal relationships, the spiritual fulfillment that comes from them, may be more important than the tangible things. That you place more value, more often than not, on the intangible over the tangible, and that you value the spiritual over the material, more often than not. When someone speaks, thinks, and acts in accordance with these principles, that is what I define as being a spiritual person.